Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I am here to film my September and October reading wrap up. This has been a really weird couple of reading months. I didn't read a lot in September. I only read 3 books, which they were all really good and really impactful, and I was just kind of taking my time with them. And then in October, which has been a crazy busy month, I read 7 books in October, almost 8. So I'm very happy with my with my reading status, and I read a lot of really good books that I'm excited to chat with everyone about. So sorry, I keep fixing my top, but I'm just gonna dive right into it because I have a lot of books to talk about and I don't want to yammer on for too long. So I'll start with the first book that I read in September, which I picked up for Shorty September, and that is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. And this one is pretty controversial on Booktube, and I loved this book so much. I think the people that have valid issues with this story are people that I think the book has been pitched to them the wrong way. So I'll give you the premise. Basically, it's from the perspective of this young girl who is locked in this cage with lots of other women, and they have little to no memories of what happened before they were in there. They don't know why they're in there, and they never leave. The door opens once a day for food. There's male guards that are watching them at all times, but they never ever speak to them. And that is just their life that they plan on living until they die, until one day the doors open and all of the men are gone. And what do they do? And what is their journey like? And a lot of the feedback has been that it feels kind of unfulfilling because you don't necessarily find out why they're in the situation that they're in. And I think a lot of people go into this looking for a dystopian read that's kind of like The Power or The Hunger Games. That's like a feminist dystopia that's going to be really powerful and impactful in that way. And I think that it was impactful for me in a completely different way. And I think that it is very introspective. It's very philosophical. First of all, a lot of people online think that this is a new release. This is not a new release. This is French translated fiction that came out in the 90s, and it was written by a woman who was a prisoner of war during World War II. So I think that provides some context, like to look at it more as a classic as opposed to a new release. And I think you should go into it in a way like it's philosophical, it's introspective. This book left me with so much reflection. What makes us human? What is the point of life? What makes us women? And I think that it's really, really powerful in that sense. I've been thinking about this book a lot since I picked it up, and I highly recommend it to everyone. I think just go into it with the right mindset and know what you're going to get out of it, and you will really enjoy it. That's my advice. That's just my take. Obviously, lots of respect to the people that read it and didn't necessarily gel with it, but that's how I feel about it. So that's I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. And also, this was my Shorty September pick. It's a very quick read. I read it slowly because I really wanted to take my time with it, but it's 172 pages long, my edition. So that was my Shorty September pick, and I gave it 4.75 stars. My next read is Your Table is Ready, Tales of a New York City Maitre d' by Michael Cecchi-Azzolina. I really enjoyed this one. This one is also a little bit controversial. I haven't seen this a lot on BookTube, but it is a memoir about a young man who was living in New York City, grew up in New York City, and started working in the 80s in restaurants. And I read a lot of service memoirs. I worked in service for a really long time doing front of house work, and a lot of these memoirs are back of house kind of kitchen stories. Obviously the biggest one is Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain, which is amazing, a great book, but I've never really read anything from the front of house perspective. I really enjoyed this. Some of the feedback on this book is that it's very like maybe unnecessarily raunchy. It's very name droppy. It's drugs, sex, that kind of thing. I thought at the beginning, I kind of got that impression a little bit, but I thought it kind of came into its own as the story went on. And because I worked front of house, I just have such a soft spot, I guess, for this kind of story. And I remember I was reading it I was so engrossed in it. I was picking up a coffee at my local cafe, and I was literally standing waiting for my coffee, book open, reading. And the girl who makes my coffee, I'm a regular, she was like, "What are you reading? I've never seen you read like that before," because I was so, like, I literally couldn't even look up from it to order. I was so engrossed in the story. So it definitely had its peaks and lulls, but on the whole, I really enjoyed it. I recommend it if you've worked in service. I think you would really like it. And that's Your Table is Ready. So the next and final book that I read in September is Careless People, A Cautionary Tale of Power, Greed, and Lost Idealism by Sarah Wynne Williams. So this is a whistleblower memoir of Sarah, who worked in public policy at Facebook for years, like years and years and years, from the very early days until very recently. And it's really like an expose about what her situation was like working there. I had so many complicated thoughts on this book. I wrote some notes, so don't mind if I'm looking down. Yes, so she faced, I mean, this is like the definition of truth is stranger than fiction. Like, if I read this as a novel of a story that was not real, my feedback would be that it's too unrealistic. Like, these people are too evil to be real. Let's start there. So she faces sexual harassment from multiple people. The work hours and work conditions are inhumane, absolutely unbelievable, including but not limited to actively giving birth in stirrups, pushing, sending emails from her laptop to her boss. She comes back from an extremely traumatic maternity leave where she had life-saving surgery, almost died, and she was given a negative performance review on the day she came back from maternity leave because of her attitude and the fact that she was difficult to reach. The things she experienced are literally unbelievable. And that's just personal work experience. There's a woman who was passed out on the floor, dying, having a seizure, and all of her upper superiors were just sitting there watching. Like, they don't even know their names. Anyway, I could talk forever about the work conditions at Facebook, but then that's not even getting into the atrocities that Facebook is committing on the world outside of their employees. Like, they incited so much violence in Myanmar, targeting damaging ads specifically at vulnerable youth to attack them and purposely do harm to them. Constant bold-faced lying to the public with zero repercussions, and then intentional misinformation that was spread by working closely not only with the Chinese Communist Party but also Donald Trump's campaign. And Facebook had a huge hand in getting him elected, which Mark Zuckerberg admitted himself, which comes out in this expose. So, I mean, it's unbelievable. It's definitely worth the read. My negative feedback, I would say, is that I was 50 pages into the book, which for context is this far into the book, and I was flipping forward thinking, okay, when does she quit this job? Because it was terrible from the start. And I kept flipping forward thinking, okay, when does she leave? When does she leave? When does she leave? She doesn't leave until the last chapter of the book. She stays with Facebook for years and years and years. And I think something that I just couldn't get out of my head while I was reading this was, at what point does trying to fix things from the inside or trying to do good work from the inside just become complacency? And what role does Sarah Wynne Williams have in all of this? And is she skirting responsibility by publishing this whistleblower memoir? So those are my complicated feelings. I don't star rate memoirs just because I find it's kind of weird to rate people's lived experiences. I don't know, that's something I've started doing recently, but I really feel complicated about this. If anyone else has read this, please let me know, because I'm dying to talk about this with anyone. It's crazy. I'm actually surprised that more people are not talking about this book. So yes, if you've read it, please let me know. And I do, on the whole, recommend it. I think it's got some really interesting stories and context. So that's everything that I read in September, and now we will dive into my many October reads. Okay, so I'm gonna get into my October reads now. Sorry if the lighting and the camera angle has changed a little bit. I took a little bit of a break between reading months. So I'm just gonna dive right into October. So I started off with a quick little Victober read, and that's Coffee with Dickens by Paul Schleich, I think. And this is a little series. I actually got this as a gift from my dad at Christmas time. He always gets me a nice folio edition of a book and then some fun little thrifted stuff as well. So he thrifted this. And I really like the format of these little guys. So it's basically essentially it's written like you're having a conversation with the person. So in this case, Dickens. If you sat down with him over a coffee and you could ask him any question, what would you ask and what would his response be? So I thought this was really fun. It covers a range of different topics. It gives a nice short little introduction to Dickens, and then you kind of dive into the conversationalist piece. And talk about a bunch of different topics, different works, their personal relationships. I thought this was fun. I thought it was light. It was a really good introduction to learn a little bit more about Dickens. So that was my first read. And I gave this one 3 stars because I thought it was fine, but it's not necessarily super memorable, but I did enjoy myself while I was reading it. The next book I was really surprised by, which is The Binding by Bridget Collins. Really did not see this one coming, and it totally blew me away. So The Binding takes place in, it's like a nondescript time in history. It was kind of giving me like medieval vibes a little bit, and it's about a young boy who becomes a binding apprentice kind of against his will. And in this world, books only exist if they've been bound from someone's memories. And so if you have something that you want to forget, you go to a binder and they turn it into a book, and you lose all memory of this thing happening. And so if you're reading a book, you are literally reading someone else's memories. And so books are kind of this taboo, almost forbidden thing. And I thought that was really interesting. And then this boy who goes to the bindery to be an apprentice finds a book with his name on it. So he's bound memories of himself. And what do you do? And I really did not see the subject matter coming at all. It's dark. Like, I would definitely check the trigger warnings for sure before you go into this. I thought this was going to be like light, fun fantasy. It's not like that at all. Like, it's almost like a heavier, darker, like it almost read more like historical fiction, even though obviously it is fantasy. But I really, really enjoyed myself reading this, and I highly recommend it. But definitely check the trigger warnings before you read it and kind of go into it in the right vibe. And I picked this up again in the fall, but I think this would be a really kind of cozy, wintry read. So highly recommend The Binding if you're looking for a really good fantasy work. The next book or play that I read was A Midsummer Night's Dream. I had a library copy, so I'll throw a picture up. I really liked this. It was fun. Read it in a day. I was hoping to read it for Shakespeare, but I obviously didn't get to it on time. But I just enjoyed it anyway. I really like the comedies. They're obviously not my favorite Shakespeare works, but I had a really good time reading it anyway. And it was kind of a nice light refresher after reading The Binding, which was so heavy. The next book that I read was also kind of a bit of a disappointment, and that was Clanlands, which again, I had a library copy, so I'll put a photo up, but it's whiskey warfare and a Scottish adventure like no other. And this follows Sam Heughan and Graham McTavish, I believe is his last name, and they star in the Outlander TV show as Jamie Fraser and his uncle. And they go on this Scottish road trip, and they're checking out all these different places and learning about culture. And I thought this was going to be a slam dunk 5-star for me. One, because I love Outlander. I genuinely love Sam Heughan. I love Scotland and Scottish history and lore, and I am planning a trip to Scotland. So I thought this is the perfect read. And I gave it 3 stars. Honestly, it probably could have been lower. It's probably closer to a 2-star read. It just felt very half-baked. Like it really just kind of felt like they brought up all these topics and didn't really dive into any of them. And I didn't really love the way that it was edited. So it was written from Sam and Graham's perspectives, but it was very repetitive. Like, Sam would talk about something for 4 or 5 pages, and then Graham would talk about the same thing and repeat a lot of the information that Sam was saying. And it was just not what I was really hoping it would be. So I definitely only read it if you love Outlander. And even then, I just didn't really feel like it was worth picking up, which I'm so sad to say because I really wanted to love this one, but I didn't really get much out of it. So I can't highly recommend this one, unfortunately. But a good one that I read next is The Very Secret Society of Regular Witches, which I gave 4 stars. I read this on my Kindle, so I'll put a little photo here. This was really good, which is, I'm so glad, because I've been kind of swing and missing on a lot of kind of fun, cozy seasonal reads. I think seasonal reading has become kind of a trend lately. And so in the fall, there's all of these witchy and pumpkin and cafe and all Scott and all these theme books that, to me, they kind of just read like tropey AI slop. Like you pick them up and finish them and nothing really happened and they're not fulfilling. And so it's really hard to find like a good seasonal book that I really enjoy. And The Very Secret Society of Regular Witches definitely pulled it off. It was a cozy, fun romance. It was witchy, but it also had enough substance and plot to make the book worth reading, and it made you interested in it. And I just really, really liked it. So I highly recommend it. I mean, it's not, you know, like the next great work of literature, but if you're looking for like a good cozy fall read, I think this one is a really good one to pick up. The next book that I read is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. So this is a retelling of Dracula through the perspective of one of his brides, and it's supposed to be like a queer retelling of Dracula. I, again, had really high hopes for this one. I think that retelling Dracula through a feminist lens as a way to portray abusive relationships is really interesting. I thought that strand of it was really well done. I was really fast. I read this really quickly. I watched a video today that Reading with Elsie made. I'll tag their channel in the description box down below. But they were talking about how the queer representation in this book is just not that great. And if I had to describe the queer representation in this book, I would say it is like the equivalent of a straight couple who are on Tinder that are looking for a third in their relationship. Like, it's just weird. And the two women in this book call each other sister, and it's very familial, but they're also having sex, and it's just weird. And I thought that it was just honestly like bad bi representation and bad polyamorous representation as well, which I guess is the point. Like, it's supposed to be abusive and Dracula-esque, but I just think it was marketed in a way that was not that. And overall, I also thought the language in this, like, it has a lot of great reviews online for being so poetic and beautifully written and literary, and to me it leaned more like fan fiction-esque, kind of. Like, it just, I don't know, it was giving Tumblr in a way that I didn't love. So I gave this one also 3 stars because I think it did do a great job kind of doing the representation of the abusive relationship, and I read it really fast, but looking back on it, I don't think it was super well done. So that's my thoughts on A Dowry of Blood. Also, maybe a bit of a controversial take, I'm not sure. And then the last book that I read in one day, which is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is, it's about this, okay, let me just explain. So there's this man who's coming out of prison. He's been in prison for 10 years. His name is Oliver. And on his last day in prison, the detective that has been working with him for this entire time, every Tuesday or every once a week, comes in and says, I want you to tell me the truth about what happened. And he always says no. And now the detective comes in and says, I'm retiring. I'm going to go work in the private sector. This is going to have no impact on you or your life at all, but I really want to know what happened. Will you tell me what happens? And so we learn kind of what happens as he tells his story. And it follows these 7 friends that were in a very competitive art school Shakespeare program, and they're in their final year, and someone dies. And it follows the story of how everything happened. This was so good, and also just like obviously a complete ripoff of The Secret History. I love The Secret History, one of my favorite books of all time. So good, so well done. I love Donna Tartt. I think this is objectively just like The Secret History retelling, but I think if you look at it from that lens, it's a really good retelling. I thought it was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. I read it really quickly. I think that she doesn't romanticize academia in the way that a lot of people that are writing, again, the tropification of literature is people just write tropes and then everything around those tropes suck. And I find that a lot of dark academia work really romanticizes academia, whereas the whole point of The Secret History is that you shouldn't be romanticizing dark academia, and I don't think M.L. Rio did that. So overall, I did enjoy it. Obviously, just a rip off of The Secret History, but if you go in knowing that and don't care and just want to enjoy yourself, I thought it was really well done and I liked it. So that's everything I read in October. I did have one DNF, and that is Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. I don't think this is a bad book. I think that this was done too well, essentially. So Annie Bot is a robot that is created to be the perfect girlfriend. And this is written in the perspective of Annie and her day-to-day life as this perfect girlfriend robot for her owner, Doug. I made it... Oh, I actually still have my bookmark in. I made it 33 pages in, and I had to put it down because the misogyny and the way that they talked about Annie, like, it literally made me sick to my stomach. And I was reading this before bed, and I put it down, and I just thought, like, ugh, like, it was so hard to read. And it should be hard to read, and it's intentional. Like, I don't think that the author did a bad job, but I just think I remember thinking, like, I don't need to read this. Like, I don't need to put myself through this. I know the patriarchy is bad. I know that there is no perfect woman. Like, I think it's a good, I'm sure it's a good book. I don't know. I didn't finish it, but I just couldn't put myself through it. And I even started to skim forward and read a little bit, and the stuff that was happening just, like, made my stomach turn. So I really couldn't force myself to read this one, although I'm sure it's a great book, and it does what it's trying to do, is what I'm getting at here. So I did DNF this one, but the rest of the books I enjoyed. I had a great reading month, and I'm looking forward to November. I have some fun buddy reads coming up. I'm currently reading Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice for a buddy read with Em Reed, so I'm really excited to check in with her and hear her thoughts on this one. And I have some other fun reading projects coming up in November I am excited to talk to y'all about. So thank you so much for watching my wrap up. If you've read any of these books, please let me know what you think in the comments below. That's my favorite part, is hearing what everyone else has to think about the books. Even if you completely disagree with me, I want to hear. So please leave a comment down below, and thank you so much for watching my long, rambly, sun is setting October and September wrap up. Okay, have a great day, guys. Thanks. Bye.